Hello, and welcome to English for Vietnamese Speakers. I'm Lance, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the F versus the V sound in English. Now, these sounds exist in Vietnamese. Even though there's no letter F in Vietnamese, there is a PH in Vietnamese which takes on the F sound. Classic word, pho. There's the V sound, vang. The problem is the articulation, particularly of the V sound, the voicing, is not typically as strong in Vietnamese as it is in English. And the same with the F sound. It's usually not quite breathed as it is fan in English. And so as Vietnamese speakers, you're going to have to work on making these sounds a little louder, a little longer, and you're going to have to practice. The other really tricky part of the F and V sounds for Vietnamese speakers are that these sounds in Vietnamese always occur at the beginnings of words. Whereas in English, we have these sounds at both the beginning and the ends of words. And so making these sounds at the ends of words is very unnatural. So we're going to have to work on that. You're used to making these sounds and then transitioning into other vowels. Now you're going to have to retrain your brain and your mouth and your lips on how to transition from another sound, usually a vowel, into one of these two sounds at the ends of words, and sometimes then transition into another sound after that. So there's a few times when these sounds are in the middle of words, which is also going to be tricky. We're going to go through the mechanics of both sounds. We're going to then work on some minimal word pairs, where the only way to distinguish the two sounds is with the F or the V. The rest of the words will be either very similar or exactly alike, to help you practice being able to clearly make these sounds different from each other. And then you should record yourself, make video of yourself to see how your mouth is working. And once you have that down, then we're going to work on some sentence practice. And this is where it all comes together. Individual words, it's easy to focus on the word and to really get that working well. But then once you put it into sentences, then your mind is thinking ahead about the next word in the sentence. You're thinking about stress and rhythm, and your mechanics, your lips and your mouth revert back to what they've been trained to do for many, many years, sometimes decades, of how you say this in Vietnamese rather than how you say this in English. Okay, so how do you actually make these F and V sounds? The mechanics of both are very similar, but let's start with the F sound because it's the unvoiced part of the pair. It's made by placing your bottom lip on your top teeth. And from there, it's just airflow. You just blow air out, consistent airflow. It shouldn't be a there isn't a release at the end. It's just a This is a quieter sound, okay? So, but mostly because it isn't the voicing, and it's just airflow. It's the air between your bottom lip and your teeth. Don't get the tongue involved. The tongue is not involved in either one of these sounds. So keep the tongue just relaxed and neutral in your mouth, not near the top. Just keep it where it isn't involved in the airflow or anywhere near your teeth, and just blow out. Again, consistent. It's not a or a no breathing in, just consistent, relaxed airflow. Fan. Fan. Okay? And again, no voicing. If you put your hand on your throat, you should not feel any vibration. The V sound is where the vibration comes in. So let's talk about the V sound. The key here is in voicing the sound. The mechanics are identical to the F, except there's a you're probably going to have slightly less airflow than you had with the F, but it's the key is the voicing. You want to start the voicing before you start making the sound van as early. Otherwise, you're going to sound like you're trying to make an F and then transition into the voicing in the V, and it's going to be confusing. So use your voicing in order to voice, to engage the vocal cords. You have to breathe out. So make sure that you're engaging your vocal cords and you feel the vibration right as you're starting to make the sound. And then both of these sounds lengthen the sound. In Vietnamese, you're used to making these sounds short, much shorter than we do in English. And when you make these sounds short, it's going to be very hard for us as English speakers to hear that voicing because you're going to make them short and you're not used to voicing the V, van, van, as much as we expect you to or that we need you to in order to be able to understand you. And so it's going to sound like fan. Did you say fan? Or did you say van? Or were you trying to say something completely different? So making these sounds louder, longer. Fan. Fan. Really draw those out. And van is going to help you be better understood. It's going to help you train your body, your lips in particular. It's going to help train your tongue to stay out of the way. Don't get involved in the sound. It's going to help you just pronounce and make these sounds more like an English speaker and less like a Vietnamese speaker. Key issues. Vietnamese doesn't voice these quite as strong. And they're short. The other big problem here with both of these sounds is you're used to making these sounds at the beginnings of words. But in English, you have to also make these sounds at the ends of the words. Leave. Leave. Which is going to be very unnatural. You're going to want to put vowels after. Leave. Leave. Leave the vowels out. There is an E on the end of leave, L-E-A-V-E, but it's a silent E. We'll get into silent E's and the reason for that. Do not put vowels after the F and V sounds unless they're there. There are a few, okay? But don't put extra sounds, but you have to voice the sound. You can't leave the sound off. I know you're not used to doing it, and so therefore you're just like, I just won't say it. In Vietnamese, often ending sounds can be left off. They're English. Sometimes we leave out vowels and consonants in certain places, but not generally at the ends of words, not words like these. So you have to focus on finishing the sound, finishing strong with that F or V sound. Leave or leaf. And make sure with the F, leaf, no voicing. Okay, make sure that you're not voicing from the beginning to the end, but with the V sound, leave, leave. Okay, and you'll hear a bit of a V on when I release that V. I would encourage you not to. You can, but then it tends, when you aren't used to doing that, it tends to sound like you're putting an A on the end. Leave. No, leave. It can be released. It doesn't have to be. It can be leave. Leave. Both of these are continuing sounds so that you can make them long. You can make them really long. As opposed to a stop sound like a T, let. Let. Or a G, which is a stop sound but a bit longer, dog. You have this G sound in Vietnamese, ga, chicken, back of the throat, very strong, dog. But it's also a stop sound. It's a little bit longer. But the F and the V, just lengthen them. Leaf. Leaf. And I want you to really practice that when we get into the practice sounds. Leave. You can really make that buzz, okay? And you should feel your throat and really make sure that your vocal cords are engaged when making the V. Okay. Now let's work on some minimal pairs. Basically, that just means we're going to work on words where the primary difference in pronouncing the two words are the two sounds that we're working on, F and V. All right? So let's practice several of these words where the sound is at the beginning. And then we're going to practice some of these words where the sounds are at the ends of the word, which are going to cause you quite a bit more trouble, most likely. So the first pair, fan. And again, I want you to lengthen these sounds. Fan. And the second part of the pair, van. Van. Okay? You'll notice you need to clearly differentiate, clearly make these sounds different. Otherwise, the words become confusing. And as English speakers and people listening to you speaking English, we're not going to understand, what you're saying. All right, let's try another pair of words. Fine. Fine. And again, a good way to practice these are to record yourself, both video and audio, so you can hear and you can see what your mouth is doing. Okay, now the second part of that, vine. Vine. Now, again, your top lip is not involved in this sound. If it gets in the way, it's going to impede the airflow and you're not going to get the sound. It's going to be a or a puff so keep the top lip away. Keep your tongue out of the sound. It's just your bottom lip and your top teeth. Okay? Let's try another pair. Fast. Fast. Now be sure you've stopped and transitioned from the F, the breath on the F, into the voiced A sound. Fast. So that we're not getting any of the voicing in the airflow. Now for the V, we want that voicing from the very beginning. We don't want any airflow without the voicing. Otherwise, it starts to confuse the difference between your F and V sounds. So, vast. And that's voiced all the way through. Vast. Lengthening these sounds out is going to be odd for you as Vietnamese speakers. And that's understandable. You don't lengthen sounds like this. You don't make long sounds. You're very consistent, and it's almost always short sounds, especially consonants. And you can leave consonants off at the end. In the South, they often soften the consonants at both the beginning and the ends of words, which, as I'm learning Vietnamese, makes that a bit of a challenge for me. My ear doesn't hear the sounds. I'm used to very explicit, very strong sounding consonants. And so I completely understand how this is very foreign to you as Vietnamese speakers. Let's try one more pair. Fail. Fail. Again, lengthening out that F sound. Practice lengthening that sound. It's going to be unnatural, but trust me, it's going to make you a better English speaker to do that. Okay, the second part of that pair. Veil. Veil. Vietnamese vowels are very clear. You've got the diacritics, you've got the indications of how to say the vowel sounds, and when you see them written, you know exactly how they're supposed to sound. English, yeah, sorry, not so easy. There are some rules. We'll get into those when we get into pronouncing the different vowel sounds, and especially the vowel clusters. But yes, I know this looks weird. There's no A in this word, but it sounds like an A. One more time. Veil. Now let's work on some ending sounds for F and V. Now, these are going to be more difficult for you as Vietnamese speakers because while the sounds of F and V are familiar at the beginnings of sentences, in Vietnamese, they're always at the beginning. Whereas in English, we can have the F and V sounds at the beginning, the middle, and the ends of words. And this gets more difficult because you're not used to transitioning from other sounds, vowels or consonants, into these two sounds. So your mouth just doesn't know how to get into the sound. But let's try a couple of word pairs and get some practice on making these sounds in different places in the words than you're used to. All right? So the first pair, half. Half. Again, you can really draw out that ending sound. These are not stopped sounds. These are continuous sounds. And so there's no need to try to put a hard stop on the end. And the second part of that pair, have. Have. Really get that buzz in your throat. Okay, and now for the second pair. Leaf. Leaf. Really, again, really draw that F out. And the second part, leave. Leave. Now, that E on the end, be careful of it. It's a silent E. We don't really say it. Now, you may hear me release the V a bit, okay? Which to Vietnamese speakers, because you're really attuned to subtle sounds, because Vietnamese is spoken quietly and vowels and consonants aren't said as loud and as hard as we do in English, you may pick up a bit of a release there. That is not me voicing the E or putting an A sound in, but English speakers, you can pick up on that, and Vietnamese speakers then will often pick up that sound and add a vowel to the end of the word. Please try not to do that. So one more time. Leave. See there, I didn't release it. And again, continuing sounds, just let them finish naturally on their own. Okay? One more. And this is a pair I get asked about a lot. Life, live, leave. There's subtleties in the vowels, and there's a difference in the F and the V sound, as we've learned in this lesson. Okay? Life. Life. And now the second part of that pair, live. Live. And we'll get into some more sounds for the F and V at different parts of the words when we get to the sentences. Now let's go on to the sentence practices. Again, this is where we're really going to put it all together. Being able to correctly make these sounds while speaking in sentences is where the real work is going to come in. With the words, you can concentrate on it and you can focus on the word. When you're speaking in sentences, your brain is just naturally moving forward to the next word and the next word and the next word, and it's thinking ahead of you, ahead of your mouth and your lips and your tongue. And when you do, it doesn't disengage the brain. It's moved on to the next thing while your mouth is still making the sounds that the brain has recognized. And it's much easier to fall into the way that you said it in Vietnamese all your life. That's just not the way it's done in English. And so the sentence practices is really where you can start to see, have I really practiced? Have I really drilled these sounds into my brain? All right. So let's go with the first sentence. I feel very fine after visiting the festival. So this sentence is a pretty good tongue twister. It has sounds both at the beginning and the ends of words, and a few in the middle. After is probably going to be a bit tough for you. And then we've got one word with both the F at the beginning and the V in the middle. Festival. For now, let's just focus on the F's and the V's. And I realize that V in the middle of festival is probably going to be tricky. Okay. She put fresh flowers in the vase. So a couple of sounds there that we've worked on. The SH sound, really work on refining that and making sure you're differentiating between the SH and the S sound. We have a P sound in there. Really blow out that P. Put. And then we have some odd sounds. Flowers. The S can often take on the Z sound. So don't be thrown off by the fact that flowers has more of a Z and not a S as we practice with the S sound. We'll get more into the different sounds that consonants can make a bit later. Okay, one more time. She put fresh flowers in the vase. And really practice on those S sounds at the ends of words. A lot of Vietnamese learners do two things. They add S's where they're not supposed to be, and often they'll drop S's where they are supposed to be. Again, Vietnamese, you can often drop ending sounds or weaken ending sounds. Can't do that in English. You've got to get those sounds in. All right, one more sentence. Can you prove the price of the food? Okay, a couple of interesting sounds. The OO sound we'll get into. Again, English vowel sounds are confusing. A lot of it is, I think, just memorization, but we'll go through many of those sounds in upcoming lessons. One more time. Can you prove the price of the food? So don't forget your THs, tongue between your teeth. It's the most difficult sound for Vietnamese speakers to make. And so we're going to continue hitting that sound. We're going to continue practicing it. You may say, but Lance, sometimes you pronounce that word the with a long E, and sometimes you say the. This is true. That's what's called a schwa, to get a bit technical in English. We'll get a bit into how these mechanics work when we get into linking sounds and the way English speakers can change sounds. Again, we'll sometimes drop consonants, we'll sometimes drop vowel sounds. But as somebody who's learning English, I really encourage you to use the as much as possible, because that's just going to reinforce the pronunciation of that. So again, focus on just clearly saying the sounds and drawing those sounds out, making them longer so that you get practice. Okay, that's it for the F and V sounds today. Thank you for listening. You learned how to say both of these sounds and make them sound differently. Please like and subscribe if you want to see additional videos in this series. I'll be releasing videos on a weekly basis covering different pronunciation topics. Thanks again, and hope to see you in the next video.